Hands down, no doubt in my mind, this is the best way to win your VA compensation claim. And this is something that we preach here on CivDiv all the time. And I'm not joking about this. We all know what a fully developed claim is, or an FDC. And what I'm going to recommend is actually one step below an FDC. And that is what I call an evidence-based claim, or an EBC. Not a real thing in the VA. It's a concept that I really like to drive into veterans at a minimum. The minimum standard is evidence-based claim. Maximum fully developed, minimum evidence-based claim. The difference between a claim that is fully developed and an evidence-based claim is the nexus. That's the only difference. Now you might ask, why wouldn't you submit a nexus with your VA claim? And I'm going to answer that first before people get all crazy on me, because I know you're probably not going to like this answer, but it's the truth, okay? The overwhelming majority, not a little bit, the overwhelming majority of all VA claims, all the millions of VA claims, do not need a private nexus from your healthcare provider, right? Or a private DBQ from some other provider outside your network. It's generally not needed because think of it. Just think practically here. If you have the evidence from service and you have the current diagnosis, a C&P examiner should be able to make the nexus. Now, we all know C&P examiners are not created equal in the eyes of not being a complete waste of space. But if you have the evidence, you should be good to go, okay? It does not take a genius to see evidence from service, a current diagnosis, and throw those together, okay? That's their job. That's the contract. That's what they get paid to do. And the majority of veterans go through the process exactly like that without a private nexus and a DBQ, or a nexus and a DBQ from their VA healthcare provider. So when I say submit an evidence-based claim, here is what that looks like start to finish, and it's really not that hard. First thing we have to do, we have to have our service treatment records. You need to physically go through your records, whether you are analog and you like to print that out and read for some reason. That's not me. Or you use online, and Control F goes a long way, by the way. You've got to be able to go through your service treatment records from your military time and see exactly when and where. That's what two factors you need to know. When and where your complaints for, let's just say, lower back are. So for instance, you go through your records and you find out in 2010, I came back from deployment, and in my post-deployment health assessment, or PDHA, I have a complaint about my back. I was complaining to my PDHA provider that my lower back hurts. That's the first time I started to complain about my back in my PDHA. But after that, I sucked it up and pushed through because I had another deployment coming. I was switching units. We went to the field. I mean, we all know how it runs, okay? Whatever that reason is, there you go. The point is, you know exactly when and where that's at. So now whenever you are talking to a C&P examiner, you can say, hey, in 2010, on my PDHA, I complained about my lower back. And you can pretty much walk the examiner onto that. If you don't do it, you're just hoping, okay? You're hoping the examiner does that for you, which we all know is generally not going to be the case. It does happen, but generally not going to happen. You also need to submit a current diagnosis, and I can't preach this enough. Outside of BDD claims, anytime a veteran submits a claim without a diagnosis, they get denied for not having a diagnosis, it makes me want to just grab their head and shake and shake and shake and shake until you understand what I'm telling you. No diagnosis, no claim, point blank. I don't care who you are. I don't care what company you use. If you do not have a diagnosis, you have no claim. It will be denied 1,000% of the time. Now, technically, you can submit treatment records and multiple documented symptoms and hope that the examiner will diagnose you during the exam, but that is generally not the case. And if you do that, which it does happen, if you do that, what you're doing is you're trusting the examiner, who you have no idea, okay? They don't know you, you don't know them, they just saw your records the last 5 minutes. You're trusting that examiner to give you a medical diagnosis, which is simply not going to be the case unless your records are just overwhelming, bam, in their face about your documented symptoms, your treatment plan, or whatever that looks like, okay? But if you do it, if you go against my advice, you submit that claim without a current diagnosis, be my guest. Go right ahead. Do whatever you want. You're going to anyways. You're an idiot. But when you get denied, just know I'm going to shake you so hard virtually. Okay, this is me. This is your head. I'm shaking. I'm going to shake some common sense into you until you listen to what I'm saying, right? Not just me. All the YouTubers are going to agree you got to have a current diagnosis, all right? You got to. The claims companies know that better than anyone. You got to have a current diagnosis. It's not an option. The last thing to submit in an evidence-based claim is situational dependent, but that is a statement, whether it's a personal statement, a lay statement, or both. There are claims where I always recommend statements, and those are generally going to be your mental health claims, migraines, and IBS. It's pretty much anything that can't be x-rayed, all right? Statements for a condition like your lower back still come in clutch, but the content of the statement kind of changes a bit because statements need to essentially highlight your evidence that you already have and submitted with that claim. Your statement is not for the examiner. It's for the VA, the rater. Your statements are for the rater, not your examiner. Get that through your thick skull, not the examiner. They're for the rater, for the VA. So now we know we have a complaint about our back in 2010, right? We're going back to the scenario. We know we have a complaint about our back in 2010. So I'm going to start my statement with something like this. 2010 is the first time while active duty during my post-deployment health assessment, I started to complain about my back. Once I got out, I went to the VA or private, whichever applies to you. And now I've been seeking treatment for my back and attending physical therapy for the last 1.5 years. Now that part, I'm just making up that part, right? Make sure you put your evidence in there. But you get the point. Your statement reinforces your evidence from service and your current diagnosis or current treatment plan. And that's it. It's not rocket science. Evidence from service, current diagnosis, and a statement, leave it at that. Now, if you can get your provider to complete a DBQ or write a Nexus letter for free, go for it. I'm in your corner. You're probably not going to be able to. That's a whole other topic, all right? But if not, do not sweat it. It's not really a big deal, but it is my opinion, that private Nexus letters and private DBQs, which are really strong, they do work a lot. They come in clutch in supplemental appeals. And of course, the Board of Appeals, but the board is our last option. Again, my opinion. Now, if you have the means and the money just laying around and you don't mind paying for a private Nexus and a private DBQ, that's only going to strengthen your claim. But the problem I see, and this is one of the reasons I recommend you don't do it, the problem I see is veterans who lack the evidence will go to a Nexus letter mill and still pay the price knowing that provider is going to write a baloney Nexus on baloney evidence. You have to have the evidence. No evidence, no Nexus, period. Which kind of gets back, well, if you have the evidence, then a CMP examiner should be able to make the connection. And a lot of the times they do, okay? I'm a fan of both evidence-based and fully developed, but personally, I always start to consider private Nexus and DBQs in appeals. You can do that. You can do with that what you will. And that's it. Evidence-based claims is how veterans win their disability claims straight up. Sure, you can submit blindly and get a stellar VSR who orders a CMP exam, and you get a stellar examiner. Then your claim goes to a stellar rater and they award you service connection with the proper percentage. But that's simply not the case, and certainly not the norm. Take my advice or not. You can tell me I suck. That's fine. Both are okay with me. But if you tell me I suck, okay, do me a solid. Go to CivDiv online, right, and buy a hoodie, buy a t-shirt, buy a phone case, get some merch. At least give me that. Thank you very much.